Well, hello, everybody. We're about to get started here. Hope everybody had a great week. We got a lot to cover here on our legislative live stream. A lot of bills coming up. Big, busy week at the state legislature. So, really excited to tell everybody about it. So, if people are just joining us for the first time, every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m., we have Michael Vance, Legislative Director of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and myself, Brandon Wark from Free State, Colorado, going over the bills of the week being heard down at the state legislature. Michael, how are you this week? Michael, I can't hear you. I wonder if it could just be on my side, but
How about now? Can you hear me?
oh, I can definitely hear you. Yeah. How
Okay,
are you doing
perfect.
today, sir?
I'm doing good, all things considered. How about yourself?
Hey, very well, very well. It's been a extremely frustrating time to be a liberty-minded Coloradan with what's going on down at our state capitol. Definitely a rough, rough few weeks here. This last week was absolutely terrible down at the legislature, but I remain optimistic, and I think there's some good positive opportunity here, and some good bills to support, and some bad bills. Hopefully, we can help get people engaged with.
I completely agree, Brandon. I mean, going into this legislative session, I thought, hey, I think the Democrats might have learned their lesson a little. They should have learned the lesson from seeing a lot of these extremists get knocked out of their seats, but clearly they didn't. I mean, this has been just as radical of a legislative session as we've seen in years. So um, I think that just means that a lot more of these Democrats are going to get taken out in 2026, if not 2028 as well. But I mean, they're not doing what Colorado clearly said is they're done with this authoritarian garbage, and we just have to fight it in the meantime. So between here and 2026, it sucks, but I mean, we can just bring that fiery passion to the Capitol and say no, enough is enough.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity to get some of these bad legislators out in 2026. But yeah, people got to start learning now, figuring out who these legislators are, what kind of legislation they're supporting, and why Colorado's going the direction it is. So get started here. We have a great guest joining us tonight, Rich Guggenheim, to talk about one of the bills of the week. But let's get started. We got our week seven. Here we go. Week seven of the 2025 legislative session. We have 458 introduced bills at the state capitol so far. Absolutely outrageous number. We had Representative Ken DeGraff join us previously, and it's absolutely insane to think that as he mentioned, it's insane to think that these 100 legislators can debate, discuss, and really consider this many bills in 120 days. It's not possible. So 458 bills introduced, and we're going to tell you about some of the worst ones tonight.
Absolutely. It's been crazy going through this schedule this session schedule each week and seeing how many bills, how many committees are meeting each day, especially this upcoming week where we don't even have anything scheduled for Monday, so everything is on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and it's just absolutely nuts going through all the different committees every single day.
100%. So let's get started here. We're going to talk about some of the bills being heard in committee hearings this week. And committee hearings are where Coloradans can have their voice heard. You can show up, speak to the legislators directly in these committee hearings, tell them how bad these bills are, how good they are, and really participate in this representative government that we have here in Colorado. It's so easy to show up to a committee hearing. It's great to do it in person. You can even do it over Zoom if you can't show up in person. So no reason not to at least try and have some sort of influence about what's going on down at the state capitol. So let's talk about some of the bills. As you said, Monday is President's Day. So as a government building institution, the legislature's closed. So we're jumping to Tuesday. So this Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. The first committee we want to talk about is the House Judiciary Committee, House Committee Room 107. Upon adjournment of the State House, one of the more interesting bills, something you may have heard a bit about, it's been talked about quite a bit, House Bill 1062, penalty for theft of firearms. So let's take a look at that one. Really curious what you think about this one, Michael. This is a bill that, of course, the Republicans have been talking about since last year when a similar measure was killed. But this year, they have Democrats co-sponsoring this bill. So when you have the majority leader, excuse me, Representative Duran on there, Senator Henrichsen, son who does have a leadership position in the state Senate, I'm sure this bill is going to make it through here. So what do you think about House Bill 1062?
I'm a little concerned about this one, not necessarily from a philosophical standpoint. I mean, it's a from one standpoint, it's a decent liberty bill because it's trying to protect people's property, their private property, particularly their firearms. But at the same time, knowing these Democrats and what they tried to sneak through last year, I remember being down at the Capitol last year, and they tried to sneak a measure to basically permanently restrict anybody's. Uh, if I remember correctly, they wanted to permanently revoke anybody's Second Amendment rights if they were to basically uh, cross any barriers regarding the sensitive spaces bill. So if you were to accidentally forget your weapon on you while you picked up your kid at school, you would be permanently revoked from ever having your Second Amendment rights in Colorado again. So I'm a little concerned that they might try to sneak something through on this bill again like that. But we will see what happens. I mean, on its own, I could see it being a decent bill. How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, always concerned about any amendments that they could sneak in there. And it's so often that the Democratic majority uses some of these Republican bills to push their own agenda by amending them and adding some bad language to the bill. So it's very possible, like you were saying, Michael, that we could see that. But, 1062, not necessarily a bad bill, I don't think. If this bill would make the theft of a firearm a class six felony, regardless of the firearm's value. So, of course, definitely love people's property rights and the fact that people who are violating those property rights maybe get stiffer penalties, spend more time in jail. We have less of these criminals out on the street. That could be a good thing towards going to solve Colorado's crime problem. Crime is out of control in the Denver metro area, and this could be a step in the right direction. And hopefully keep some of these, if they do keep guns out of criminals' hands, because this is people who have been convicted of stealing them, so by definition they're criminals. Then it definitely means there's less reason to pass other restrictive gun measures because the criminals are already being punished. We don't need to go after the law abiding. So no, I think it's a good bill on its face, but yeah, we'll keep an eye out and see what happens to it. So that's House Bill 1062 being heard Tuesday in the House Judiciary Committee. So we'll keep an eye on that, see where that ends up. But let's move on here. We got a lot to cover, a lot of really big bills going this week. House Bill 1140, it's a bill I talked about previously from Representative Jarvis Caldwell and Senator Rod Pelton, where basically this is something we talked about last week with Hannah, disclosing information to immigration authorities. So basically, if these criminals were convicted of certain violent felony offenses and property crime offenses, they could be reported to immigration to be deported. Which hey, these people are convicted of violent crimes. They should be definitely first on any type of list to get them out of our community. Any thoughts on this one?
I would say, yeah, I really like this bill. Give me 1 second, actually.
Perfect. Yeah, and this bill was supposed to be heard last week for people who tuned in last week, but it did get delayed. So this week, I know Representative Caldwell Jarvis there has been a pretty vocal voice on social media, so I'm sure he'll be keeping people updated about the status of this bill. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this Tuesday in the House Judiciary Committee, so some interesting bills being heard.
Yeah. Hey, sorry about that, Brandon. Something weird happened a second ago. I heard Mayor Aaron Lamb's voice saying hello to me, and I'm like, how did that happen? Well, anyway, wanted to, yeah, real quick. I think this is a fantastic bill. It's going to make Colorado streets safer. You've already basically described it. I mean, it's really going to provide that information, the information of felons and people we do not want on our streets in Colorado to immigration authorities. So, if we could keep our streets a little safer, fantastic. I mean, uh, good bill.
Definitely. And I forgot to hit record earlier, so I am just going to go ahead and hit record now so we can make some clips later. But yeah, interesting bill, House Bill 1140. We'll see if it gets heard this week. Definitely a good bill to go after violent criminals. I mean, some of the like the penalty for theft of firearms, 1062 and 1140, actually do address the real crime problems in Colorado. So potentially some good bills there. Now, House Bill 25-1254, we're having our special guest Rich Guggenheim to jump on at about 8 o'clock and talk about that. So we'll go ahead and skip that one for now. Well, let's move on here to Tuesday, February 18th. And folks, these are committee hearing bills. You can show up, you can testify. You can, if any of these bills are of interest to you, call or email the people on these committees and tell them how you think they should vote. You know, use your voice, be heard down at the state capitol. Well, Michael, I'm
One,
really excited to, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was going to hop on that. Absolutely, your voice matters more than you possibly realize. I mean, a lot of people get blackpilled. You got to be very aware of being blackpilled on these bills because you never know what you can or what you may or not be able to tell these speakers that could excuse me, these legislators that could change their minds. Just look at, I know I've brought up Senate Bill 158 multiple times, but I think it only had one no vote in the Senate. Came to the House, seemed like it was going to be a slam dunk, and because of this live stream right here and the work of uh, Ashley Troxel and Jimmy Smers, they were able to get enough voices down to the Capitol to say, no, this is actually a really terrible bill for our civil rights. So, uh, fantastic bill. You never know what you may or may not be able to say to somebody else to get them to change their mind. So, speak your voice, speak your mind, and uh, preach liberty.
Definitely, yeah. Really excited for House Bill 1144 being heard this Tuesday in the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee. It is to repeal the retail delivery fees from Representative Dan Woog. So Dan Woog, recently reelected to the state house. He was out after redistricting, had served a non-consecutive term there. But yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. We're being nickel and dimed here in Colorado by this government that wants to take every penny that we earn. And so this bill, let's read the summary here. A retail delivery is a retail sale of tangible personal property that is subject to state sales tax by a retailer for delivery by a motor vehicle to the purchaser at any location in the state. As authorized by current law, retail delivery fees are imposed on each retail delivery by the state, Community Access Enterprise, Fleet Enterprise, Statewide Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, Clean Transit Enterprise, and Non-Attainment Area Pollution Area Mitigation Enterprise. So this bill would eliminate retail delivery fees. Now, folks, if you don't know, when you go to look up a bill on the state legislative website, click on the fiscal note. The fiscal note will tell you the dollars and cents behind the bill, but it also gives you sometimes a little bit better summary and a little bit better overview than what you see other places. So this bill would cost our state government $111 million, nearly $112 million in revenue. So that's a great thing, right? I mean, we want more money coming back to the people. The government has too much money as it is. $112 million they're getting from us through these retail delivery fees. Absolutely ridiculous.
Uh,
So the
I,
retail, yeah, yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you scroll back up really quickly, I want to point something out about Tabor. They're accounting for half of our Tabor refunds to be funded through these delivery fees, essentially. So I shouldn't say half, but half this bill is going back into the Tabor refund process. I'll say that's a lot of money to just not even have anything to do with. I mean. I that doesn't make sense. Sorry about that.
No,
Yeah,
it does make sense here. So, like as you can see, so $111 in $111 million in state revenue they're losing, but we're also losing $45 million in Tabor refunds. Like you're saying, Michael, half the money that they collect through this retail delivery fees, they have to refund through the people because the state government is collecting too much money than they're allowed to under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. So Tabor is definitely protecting us, helping us out. But how silly is this system where they take money and then have to give it back to us? Hey, how about you just don't take it in the first place?
exactly.
So great bill, really excited. Back in 2021, Senate Bill 260 imposed fees on retail deliveries by motor vehicles And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Now, sure, 29 cents doesn't seem like a lot, right? But nonetheless, people, you know how many deliveries or get how many things get delivered in Colorado every day? Enough to generate $112 million in revenue each year. I mean, that's a lot of money. And like you said, this is how the government works, right? It's so insidious because they take, oh, we're going to take 9 cents here. We're going to take 3 cents here. We're going to take 20 cents here. And then it just eventually half your paycheck's gone. You know what I mean? So it's like they got to stop somewhere. We got to reverse this trend. We need to defund the government and give money back to the people. I mean, that's how we create a true free state. And that's how we can create a prosperous economy and community for people to actually live their lives and raise their families.
Absolutely. I mean, we're one of our biggest savings graces in Colorado is Tabor, and if we didn't have Tabor, I can only imagine the nightmares that we'd be seeing down at the Gold Dome.
This is a great bill. And of course, Michael, we know that the Democratic majority is going to kill this bill. They hate the idea of giving us our money back. So, nonetheless, people, if you have time on Tuesday down there at the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee, if you got some time off your work day, something where you can reach out, testify in this committee. Let Representative Dan Woog know you appreciate what he's doing to try and help hardworking families across Colorado. And please just contact the committee members and tell them why they should vote for this bill. It's Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. in LSBA. That's the Legislative Services Building. So it's not in the state capitol. It's just south of the state capitol. In committee room A. They have two rooms over there, A and B. So please encourage people to really speak in support of this bill, to be vocal about it on social media. And of course, let's make some noise when the Democratic majority kills this bill, because we've seen them do it over and over, whether it's the paper bag fee, the eggs, all of this is over and over. The government officials have opportunity. These representatives have opportunity to give us some of our money, some of our freedoms back with good bills like this. And of course, they're not going to do it. So really good bill. Definitely keep an eye on this one, folks. Perfect. So that's the only bill in that committee that I thought was interesting this week. Now, of course, folks, there's a lot of bills being heard every week, but we're just highlighting some of the bigger ones. So moving on Tuesday to the State Veterans and Military Affairs. This is the Senate Committee, Senate Committee Room 352, meeting at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, February 18th. Three really interesting bills going through. Love this one. I'm really excited to see Senator Scott Bright, who was a previous guest on our live stream, step up to the plate here to help save people money on their gas bills. And that's your fuel for your vehicle, right? Everybody, 90% of people in Colorado probably drive to work or drive somewhere. So the fact that they can lower the price of gasoline to make it more affordable for people to get to work, to get to where they need to go, it's a great thing. So Senate Bill 117, reduce transportation costs imposed by government. What do you think about this one, Michael?
I think it's a fantastic bill. I mean, I was grateful for the interview that we had with Scott Bright a couple weeks ago. Senator Bright really gave us a lot of very valuable insights and really shed a lot of a light on his bill that we discussed with him at the time. So I'm happy to see a second bill uh, that's very liberty minded. That if enacted will be very beneficial for the people of Colorado. I mean, you and I both drive everywhere. I mean, I know how far of a drive you have to go to work every single day. I mean, it is. I mean, gas prices are are not cheap right now, and Colorado has it. And I mean, particularly when you look at Colorado's gas prices on top of how many taxes that we have to pay at the pump every single day just to get from place to place, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I love this. I love this idea. I'd love to see more. Um, I'd love to see at least one representative tag onto this bill. We'll see what happens, but I think it's a fantastic bill, and hopefully we can get this thing passed through the Senate Veteran Affairs and Military Senate Veterans and Military Affairs Committee.
Yeah, so this bill would repeal these different fees. So all these fees, they're not really visible. They get tagged onto our gas price when we're down at the pump. You don't necessarily get an itemized receipt showing you how much the gas actually costs. That would be interesting to see, and how many of these fees or taxes is what they really are. Of course, the government loves to call them fees so they can get around the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, but they are actually taxes. So the road usage fee that we have to pay, the fee on short-term motor vehicle rentals, the passenger per ride fee for car share rides, the waste tire enterprise fee. So there's fees and fees added up that people we're not even aware of, but it just shows how much money they take from us all the time. So if this bill passed, hey, we're saving the people of Colorado, the good people of Colorado who buy gasoline for their vehicles, saving them $258 million in these fees or really taxes in this next fiscal year. So I mean, what a massive savings. What a great stimulus to the economy. Just give people back their money, let them charge less at the pump, and that would be huge. So yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, and again, if you go look at how much of that money is going straight into the Tabor refund bucket, it's absolutely insane. I think 2/3 of these fees just go back to Tabor. So I mean, they don't need to be collecting these in the first place.
So you got 2 cents per gallon. Now it's 4 cents per gallon for these road usage fees. So I mean, you got to think how much this adds up to if you keep going through all
Hmm.
of these different fees here that they charge us on. So yeah, great bill. Would love to see people support this bill. Get involved, email or call the committee members and the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. Let Senator Bright know that he's doing a great job down there. Do what we can to support these good, positive, pro-liberty bills to reduce the government's impact on our pocketbooks. So Senate Bill 117, a great bill. And looking forward to seeing more of this kind of bills if the majority ever changes down there in the state capitol. So in that same committee, a couple more bills being heard. Senate Bill 158, state agency procurement and disposal of certain items. Now, this is a bill I think that flew under the radar for a lot of people, but nonetheless, this is a gun bill, folks. Another gun bill that's not being talked about. Senate Bill 158 would create procurement practices for firearms, ammunition, and firearm accessories by the state. So basically, all the law enforcement agencies in Colorado would destroy of their service firearms that are retired, damaged, or declared surplus, firearms purchased in a law enforcement agency buyback program, and firearms that are voluntarily surrendered to the law enforcement agency for destruction. Basically, it's creating these programs to just take more guns out of society. We know the bill sponsors when you look at them. Tom Sullivan at the top there, Meg Froelich, Julie Gonzalez, Kyle Brown, some of the worst down at our state capitol, total anti gun zealots, absolutely anti liberty extremists down there at the state capitol. And they want to do everything they can to pull more and more guns out of society. So, this bill just kind of updates those processes and policies in order to make sure that the guns that law enforcement ends up with don't go back to the public, because ultimately that's the goal of these authoritarians. So people can dig into that and read a little bit more in the fiscal note, in the bill summary, all of that. Read the bill yourself if you're interested. But nonetheless, very interesting. I thought this part was interesting here. Firearms have typical life cycles of 5 to 10 years. When a law enforcement agency updates its armory, it often trades in its used firearms for a credit against its purchase. While the trade in value varies with the type of firearm, it can result in a 25% savings. The bill's requirement to destroy retired or damaged firearms prevents agencies from trading them in for credits against future purposes. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. The Department of Public Safety operates the state's only government's only gun crusher. So there you go. They want to pull guns out of retired guns from law enforcement, any guns that they end up getting, and just destroy them instead of giving them to the people, selling them to the people, or to FFLs or gun shops. So, any thoughts on this one, Michael?
I mean, to me, it's par for the course. I mean, every single one of these individuals supporting this bill is a massive gun grabber. In fact, Senate Bill 3 is sponsored by both Sullivan and Gonzalez. Sullivan, as we all know, um, he loves to use everything he can to prop himself up. Thankfully, we had people like Ian Escalante, who's not willing to back down, and Senator Sullivan got very embarrassed over the weekend. So, uh, and, antics like this, I'm not surprised about whatsoever. I mean, if there's anybody, even if you were to look at the way the left talks about guns and those who should be able to handle a gun, it should be retired law enforcement, you would think. But not even them. They're not even allowed to protect themselves or protect their families with what they've been trained to handle their entire careers. Absolutely wild.
Yeah, in a real free state, I just love the idea that, just individuals will be able to buy firearms from law enforcement, maybe that were seized, confiscated, or used in a crime, or that were, retired from service. That's how it should be. That's the way it should be. We should be giving these guns back to the people, not destroying them. So, absolutely destructive and embarrassing piece of legislation there from the usual suspects. Quickly about Senate Bill 1, and then we'll have our guest join us here in just a few minutes. But the Colorado Voting Rights Act, oh gosh, you can imagine, especially when you look at the bill sponsors there. You got the Senadora Gonzalez, Representative Bacon, and Representative Junie Joseph. Of course, the Colorado Voting Rights Act, they want to, of course, modify the elections, do everything they can to make it more fair, to push things in their favor, do this and this and this. Of course, there's a long list. These bills are supposed to be single subject bills. They're not supposed to have multiple things that they do. But of course, the Voting Rights Act is their single subject. Now, there's a lot of language here, a lot of mumbo jumbo, but just briefly reading the summary, the bill codifies the right of equal access to the political process for racial, color, and language minority groups. Okay. The bill establishes a civil action process for remedying violations. It creates the statewide election database and information office in the Department of State to evaluate current law and practice related to election administration. So, the bill basically designed to figure out ways that they can help make sure the elections go the way they want them to, if you ask me.
No,
The
I
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
for it.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you're not gonna see anything that's really going to allow for the enhancement of election security in this thing, or in this bill. So my question is, what is this thing really? Is this more or less is this a little bit of a virtue signal so that way they can manipulate their own the elections to the way they see fit? I mean, we already see a lot of fraud and a lot of concerning things happening within Colorado elections in the first place. So I don't see anything that's going to really attack the main problems our election systems have right now in this bill. Additionally, if you go up and look at the FTEs, they want to bring in 20, I believe it's 16 FTEs this upcoming fiscal year, and the next fiscal year after that, I believe it's 22. So, with Colorado's economic shortfall, I believe it's $1 billion shortfall. I don't understand how you are fixing that problem by adding additional 16 one year and additional 22 the next year. So that's how I see it.
Right. Yeah, it's an unnecessary bill, definitely in search of a problem. But of course, they think there's disparities and racism in our elections somehow, even in Colorado. Of course, they want to create millions of dollars to go after making the elections a little bit more fair. So absolutely ridiculous bill. Definitely think it's a bad bill out there, but of course, this kind of legislation is pretty much guaranteed to pass, especially being Senate Bill 1. Oftentimes, those first bills, the like low numbered bills, the early bills in the session kind of show you the priorities of the caucus that year, what they're really pushing, and are pretty much their signature pieces of legislation. So they're going to pass this. It's not really going to do anything except increase costs, increase the burden on local counties, I'm sure, and they can pat themselves on the back and talk about what a wonderful job they're doing. So perfect. So we do have our guest joining us here. So we're going to be talking about House Bill 1254 with Dr. Rich Guggenheim there. Rich, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Rich here. I'm the director of legislation for Gays Against Groomers. So yeah, glad to be here tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, great seeing you. A familiar face down at the state capitol and on social media. Really appreciate all the work you do fighting for freedom and really trying to protect people. But there's one bill in particular that's on your radar this week, and that's House Bill 1254. What can you tell us about that? And I'll go ahead and share the screen again so people can see it as you talk about it.
Sure. This is a bill that I was really honored to work with Representative Ken DeGraff on. And Ken DeGraff is also working hard at the Capitol. It's an uphill battle. This one is a bill, we call it our Detransitioners Bill of Rights. And we are working on this bill because what we want to do is we want to create a cause of action and a statute of limitations for anybody who was harmed by medical practitioners who practiced what they call gender affirming care on them as minors. And the reason that we're doing this is because we obviously know that gender affirming care is sterilizing and mutilating children. And a lot of these children are growing up and then becoming adults. They're growing out of that gender dysphoria. And unfortunately, by that point in time, the damage is done. So this allows for those individuals to go after the providers and sue them. We have a whole bunch of people that we're working on getting to testify on this, including a bunch of detransitioners. We've got doctors, we've got attorneys, we've got parents. One of the things that we commonly hear from those who advocate for mutilating children is that they're not doing this to children. And we do know that that's happening. Obviously, it's happening because if it wasn't happening, there wouldn't be so many people who were up in arms and really upset about the fact that Trump's executive order has stopped the funding at the federal level from flowing to centers like Children's Hospital of Colorado and Denver Health that are doing this. And the other thing that they're saying is that the rate of detransitioners is very low. And just within the last week, one of the doctors on WPATH files that write literally the rules on how to do this type of medical procedure said that the detrans rate is as high as 30%. So we really have an obligation to protect this minority population who have been harmed by what I see as nothing more than medical malpractice. And we have an obligation to hold our medical providers to a higher standard, and this bill will set out to do that.
Rich, I want to ask you from on a local level, what are some ways we could kind of go after these hospitals that have really tried to promote gender affirming care, tried to hide what they were doing, and receiving uh, government money for doing what they were doing to these kids?
Well, there's a lot that I think we can do to expose what is happening. One of the things that I would like to see is some legislation passed in Colorado that would actually require insurance companies to make public their codes for gender affirming care medical billing and do some audits on that. Because one of the reasons we don't know exactly how many children are receiving this is because these medical providers and these hospitals that do this are not accurately coding this stuff. So the insurance companies aren't getting the proper billing codes for it. I think the other thing that, I think there needs to be an audit on that. The other thing that we need to do last year, actually, Stephanie V. Hill, for those of us who remember her, she ran a bill, I believe it was 1045, that would have created a study that would allow for us to be able to have access to understand how much money is being generated off of gender affirming care in Colorado, how many people are receiving gender affirming care in Colorado. And I think she wanted to use it to try and say, like, this is a great thing. And the moment Gays Against Groomers came out and supported that, because we were going to use it to say, like, oh, you keep telling us it's not happening. And now we actually have public record that shows that it is happening and it is harming children. She pulled the bill. So it was really quite a fascinating thing how she thought it was going to be great. And then she caught on to our scheme. So it never made it. So, we don't know. And I think that transparency and accountability are really lacking in this area. And so I think we need to have some legislation and some sort of oversight in Colorado and at the federal level across the country to make sure that we do have accurate data to understand this. And the other thing that we really need to do is we need to create studies that show the long-term impact of gender affirming care. The most long-term study we have is like 5 years after something, and you're still driving your car 5 years after you bought it, so you don't know a lot of times 5 years after it. If you're a child that goes through this, we don't have the long-term data to show what the true impacts of this are, and we really need to invest in that.
Well, and Rich, you bring up such a good point because I still see it on social media today where people say this isn't really happening. This never happens. Children aren't being mutilated, or children aren't given these surgeries. This is just right wing talking points, and it's all made up. And Trump's making this up that this doesn't happen. But of course, the reality out there is that it is happening. There's so many horrific stories about young children who were made bad decisions, and people went along with it. People who should have known better. And it is one of the great shames, I think, of our time that all of these crimes were committed against children. So it's a great bill, I think, House Bill 1254, to change kind of this limitation on this ability to go after these people who perform these procedures on children. So currently, right now, do you know, is there some sort of statute of limitations, or is there any type of system set up for victims, who child victims who end up regretting what they did and want to go after these medical people?
There's not. And unfortunately, the way the bills are written currently, they're really designed to protect the medical providers, the insurance companies, and the pharmaceutical industry. And so this is an opportunity, in my opinion, to really, if you don't want to testify, but you have the opportunity and you have questions, though, those members of the committee email those questions to the committee, because those are questions that they can ask people on both sides of this issue. The other thing that I think is really important for us to do on this type of stuff, the Democrats like to talk about how big pharma and the medical industry and the insurance industry, they're putting profits over people. Well, you're absolutely right. They're putting profits over people. They're destroying children's lives in the name of making money. And I think we have an opportunity to really showcase their hypocrisy in this case. And they're telling us it's life-saving. There's mental health outcomes from it. Well, it's really interesting when they talk about this. If it's life-saving, if there's a increased mental health outcomes, and if the number of detransitioners are super low, how can those things simultaneously be true when we're being told that this is actually never happening? So their stories are contradicting themselves, and I think that we need to write the people that are on this committee and say, look, these are questions that I have. Can you ask the experts that you're going to have in this committee on this panel to talk about these things?
Now, Rich, I know we've lived in kind of a funky cultural moment where stuff like the questions on trans theory, how we deal with individuals who believe they are trans, um, get this special kind of level of protection behind from far left groups. So if you have a genuine question, not from a place of hate, you turn into a bigot. Are you are you seeing any sort of cultural shift right now where we can start to ask these questions? Are you starting to see a change, particularly in Colorado? And I know you're the national director, so I'm kind of curious if you're seeing any sort of sea change on a national level as well.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that some of these executive orders that have been signed by the president they are not going to solve the problems that we're seeing. This is stuff that has to happen through codification of law. And because healthcare is a states' rights issue, these have to happen at the state issue. And I can tell you a couple weeks ago when we testified on the first half of our D-Trans Bill of Rights, which would allow for the medical industry to be held accountable by their insurers that cover doctors. What we had for the first time that any of us who have been in this fight could remember, and we really rallied the troops. We flew people in from across the country. We had more people testifying in support of the D-Trans Bill of Rights than we actually had trans rights activists. And that's the first time that any of us can remember seeing that happen anywhere in the United States. So I think that a lot of people are showing up. We're seeing the parents come out. We're seeing the doctors come out. We're seeing the attorneys come out. And before, what had happened was if you were an attorney and you spoke against this kind of stuff, you could lose your license. If you're a doctor, you could lose your license. And a lot of parents are afraid because you could lose custody of your children. But we're seeing that this has emboldened them. They're feeling more confident. They're coming out and they're speaking out about this kind of stuff. And I think that the more we can do that, the better, because the reality is if you don't make time to fight for your children at the state capitol in Colorado, you're going to have to make time to fight for them in the courts because the state will come for your children.
Wow. Wow. And I think, just to get back a little bit to that idea of visibility and transparency, and the fact that you have more people showing up now who have these stories and these expertise around detransitioning, around the problems that sea change we're seeing. But Rich, how important is it just, because people watching on YouTube or people out there say, hey, it doesn't make a difference. I don't need to show up at the state capitol and speak. These legislators already have their mind made up. I'm not going to change anything. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to sit at home or go to work and not pay attention to this. But what would you say to those people, Rich? What would you say to those people who are maybe reluctant to participate? We know the stakes, right? But and there's so many people out there who don't think it makes a difference. What would you say to them?
I absolutely do think it makes a difference. One of the things that I think makes a huge difference, I'll tell you, one of the things that these Democrats have had to have a come to Jesus moment with is the fact that the number of people who are coming to these committee hearings and testifying, they're Democrats. They're gay and lesbian people. They're detrans people who traditionally are told that they are supposed to identify with their caucus and with their principles and values as a party. And so when we're showing up and when we are showing up as Democrats and we're showing up as gays and lesbians and we're saying, look, you don't speak for us and you are not representing our best interests, we can look them in the eye and they're going to have a reckoning moment with that. And so the other thing is, even if you don't testify and you just show up and you sit there, that means a lot to the people who are testifying, because testifying, it can be a terrifying experience, especially if you've ever been in one of these committee hearings with these trans rights activists. They're not the nicest people. And so just to show up and say your piece means so much because you're putting it on public record, and that public record lives forever. And the other thing that's really helpful about that is a lot of times the way they'll set these bills up this session is the people who are opposed to a bill will go first, and then the people who support the bill will go second. So you have all of that opportunity to listen to the arguments that are being made by the people who support gender mutilation, and you can frame your response within that. And you can dispel their myths, you can debunk their lies. And you as a person, you have your personal vested interest in it. You got to go make your voice heard, because nothing changed if you stay silent.
Now, Rich, we've seen a lot of different testimonies over the last couple of years. Whether it comes to especially when it comes to gun rights, we see a lot of fiery and passionate testimonies. We also see some silly ones. I mean, you look at Scott Shamlin, for example. We all love Scott's
We do.
testimonies. I mean, who could ever forget a gender affirming combustion? Safe and effective. But my question to you is, how do you think people should come to these testimonies? Should they be very serious? Should they be kind of silly? Should they be almost sarcastic when they're up there? I mean, what is going to be the best approach for somebody when they're speaking in front of committee?
Well, I like to tell people that you're not necessarily speaking to the committee. When we talk about their mind is already made up. It's true. You might be able to take a swing vote, one of the ones who are a little bit more moderate on an issue, and change their mind. And that's really important. But really, what you're trying to do is change the mindset of the people who are going to hear your testimony. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important when you go to testify. I love to take the video of myself and put it out there on social media, because now instead of reaching 10 people, I'm reaching 10,000 people, because those are the people who are going to hear, and we want to change those people's minds, and they're going to listen to that and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, he's right. And those, even if it's just 1% of those 1,000 people, now you've got 10 more people who are contacting their members of the legislature and saying, I don't support what you guys are trying to do here. And so that's why testifying is so important, and that's where the culture change is also happening.
That's a great point too, and it could make the news, right? It can make the news, and then you have the social media clips. But like you said, it's getting that exposure, getting that reach out there that just transcends what's happening there. But kind of Michael alluded to this a little bit earlier. But Rich, what do you see the other states? I know Wyoming had a bill recently go through, or being heard up there. But how is Colorado the outlier when it comes to so much of this transgender type stuff?
We're the tip of the iceberg. In a lot of ways, I think if you were to look at some of the worst states for gender affirming care and mutilating children, it's probably Colorado and California are neck and neck. And then, of course, you got Minnesota with Tim Walz out there. And then, of course, Illinois, because you have the Pritzkers. Colorado is so bad, though, because we're the home base for it. We've got Tim Gill behind a lot of this, and we have the strikers behind a lot of this, and they're from Fort Collins. And so they're really, really pushing this here. And I think the other thing that, when we talk about, if Colorado is an example, it's a model for other states to push their legislation. So it's really bad here, but even in red states, it's really sad. We put a lot of effort into Kansas this last week. We were in Kansas testifying on a ban on gender affirming care. Kansas has a majority Republican. They only have one chamber, so they're a little bit different than we are here in Colorado. But they passed the gender affirming care bill. It went to the governor. She's a Democrat, and she vetoed it because she said it would hurt the economy. So they're literally saying the silent part out loud that this is about making profits off of mutilating and sterilizing children. So now there's a big push that we've got going on to try and get the legislature in Kansas to override the governor's veto and protect children.
I wonder how they would have handled slavery back in the day. Can't do anything about slaves. It's going to hurt the
Yeah.
economy. I mean, holy cow. I mean, I would never would have thought that I'd hear a Democrat in my life say that exact word, phrase, that you cannot stop the harm of children because it's going to be bad for the economy. I mean, if anything, I thought Democrats were supposed to protect civil rights, but apparently not. So, um, what kind of efforts are you seeing? I guess more nationally, I guess, what are you kind of seeing from Trump? I mean, I know you and we're all seeing a lot of the executive orders that are happening, but are you working on anything from a legislative standpoint with senators or congressmen in DC that could possibly help put a stop to a lot of this?
I have, and that's the thing, even among Republicans, there's so much among the Republicans that it's not just politics, but there's a lot of personalities that you have to manage when you're dealing with politics. And so at the federal level, Roger Marshall is a senator out of Kansas, and he has actually introduced in the Senate a version of a bill that would prohibit gender affirming care on children. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene is also introducing a version of that bill on the House side. And the struggle that I have with Doc Marshall, they call him, so he's a doctor, so he's actually really well versed in this and he understands it. And he's been able to introduce it, but it's just trying to get the Senate to introduce it. So you got to get Senate leadership willing to say, okay, let's take this bill and have a floor debate or assign it to a committee. And that has not happened yet. The other side of that too is on Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill. When I've been on the Hill talking to representatives on the Hill, I've literally had them, some of the Republican senators say to me, he's like, I support this, but can you please find somebody else to be the sponsor of this bill? Because as you know, she's a firebrand. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, I've gotten to talk with her, I've gotten to know her. Marjorie Taylor Greene off camera is not the same person that you see on camera. So she's a firebrand, but that's also because she's so passionate about these issues. And so I think when there's a lot of passion, sometimes that comes through and can be misread by even her colleagues there on the Hill.
Wow, interesting. Well, getting back to Colorado, Rich, have you had any luck working with any Democrats? I mean, are there any Democrats in our state legislature, on the executive level, or even in local levels, maybe that are elected across the state of Colorado that you've seen some sympathy towards this idea of protecting children from genital mutilation?
Unfortunately, I haven't, and I think it's just because their agenda is so ingrained, and unfortunately, there's a lot of money that comes their way through organizations like One Colorado and also the Colorado PTA. Our friend Dawn Fritz loves to do all she can to protect children. So she's obviously behind protecting children from people like me who don't want to see them mutilated and harmed. So those types of organizations, the Colorado Educators Association, have a lot of money, they have a lot of sway, and unfortunately, the Democrats in Colorado are basically a wholly owned subsidiary of the Colorado Educators Association, the PTA, and One Colorado. And so therefore, they're not even listening to people like me. So they're just, they're there. And I had quite a moment in the hallway with Kyle Brown. After I told him, I was like, to sit there and have to listen to your speech and your homophobia. And by the way, for those of you who didn't know, the other week when we testified on that bill, they once again trampled upon our First Amendment rights and told us that we were not allowed to misgender people or dead name in the Capitol. And it's just like, at what point are you guys going to realize that you're not going to infringe upon my First Amendment right and I will sue you?
What that's it's really concerning to hear that Democrats have such a lack of regard for other people's opinions. It's and you can see it in the state. You definitely saw it in the election. I mean, you saw a lot of states that were a lot of seats that were that were rather blue turn up red, and if nothing changes, they're gonna be feeling the pain once more here in a year and a half.
Yep.
In the mean, and I mean, and I saw I know the arrogance you're talking about a couple weeks ago when I was at the Capitol. Brandon and I went and testified on the egg bill, and I have a picture of Kyle Brandy sitting there, and he had to make sure to have on his little lapel pin his pronouns because nobody could tell apparently. But
Yep.
uh, I guess my question to you is, I'll make this my last question. What is the best way for people in Colorado to really make a difference? Let people know, hey, you're not going to abuse kids anymore. We're gonna take a stand and we're gonna fight this in a civil way.
It really is just about speaking speaking up, standing up, and showing up to city council meetings, showing up to school board meetings, and even, like I said, even if you don't say anything, just showing up. We've got things happening in school districts across the state, from Durango to Cherry Creek. Just said that they're going to be rooming children of the opposite sex without parental notification when they're on overnight school trips. So we've got a lot of issues that we've got to work on, and it takes the parents to get involved and to speak up, whether it's an email, even if you're one of those ladies that likes to go to the salon and get your hair and your nails done, have those conversations while you're there, because that's how it's the individual conversations that are the least arming. So when you have those in those conversations, like, it's really uncomfortable, but that's how you are in those moments where you can start to change those minds and shift the culture. And shifting the culture is so important because culture is upstream of politics.
Great points, Rich. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Again, the bill is House Bill 1254. It's being heard this Tuesday, so in a couple days' time, on February 18th, in the House Judiciary Committee, House Committee Room 107. So down there on the first floor, the ground level there. So really encourage people to show up. I mean, you got a couple days. At the very, very least, people, please email and call the members of the House Judiciary Committee. Let them know what you think about this bill. Like Rich said, hey, give them some talking points that they can use when the Rich brings his expert witnesses in there, and hopefully this can have an impact at least on some level. And I really appreciate what we said, Rich, earlier about how so much of it, at least how I summarize it, is on that individual level, whether it's at the hair or nail salon or in a committee hearing. It's one person you're trying to reach, right? If we can all reach one person at one time, and then it just grows from there. So focus on that individual effort. But really appreciate you, Rich. Any final thoughts here?
No, yeah, just please make sure you sign up to testify. If you can't do it in person, do it on Zoom. And if you do it on Zoom, I really appreciate people recording that, because those testimonies, especially from trans rights activists, are absolute gold mines. So, you can go ahead and mix and mash that up, and you can sometimes take their testimony and then say, like, well, we're speaking for the gay people. And then you get the gay people that come in and I'm like, no, they're not. And this is why we're opposed to it. And then you got the parent, like, there's just so much that you can do with that. So record it and put it out there and put it on social media, because that's where we increase our reach, and that's where we change minds and culture.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rich. Really appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday evening to talk to us about this bill. Look forward to listening to your testimony, zooming in if I'm able to, and seeing how it goes on Tuesday.
All right. You guys have a great rest of the night.
Me too. Thank you for joining, Rich. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Take care.
Do.
Awesome. Great information. Always a wealth of knowledge there. So people, get involved, speak up, have a voice. This is the bill here. You can find all of these bills at leg.colorado.gov, leg.colorado.gov. It's so easy to testify, folks. If you go in there, click on committees, um, and click on this public testimony option. I mean, it's literally that easy. Find that committees tab. Let me zoom out here so you can see committees, public testimony options, or you can click into committees and click on public testimony. You just sign up here, pick what bill you're going to talk on. I mean, it's so easy for you to do it remotely via Zoom. You can submit that written testimony or you could show up in person. It's really that easy, folks. So really please, this is a good bill this week to have your voice heard on, especially if this is an issue you care about.
One thing I want to say really quickly about that is if you don't get an email, look through your junk mail because once you use that link, you should get it. You should receive an email from the state of Colorado confirming your testimony application, for lack of a better phrase. So please make sure it's there, and if it's not, go ahead and sign back up again. Sometimes that link does get a little funky. So just want to let you know that it's something that you need to just double check every single time you do testify or sign up to testify.
Definitely, yeah. Encourage people, just get involved, have a voice, and think about it this way too. With the election coming up, we want to know how these legislators vote. Some of these legislators are in swing seats. It's going to be really tight elections come 2026, and if we can keep track now of their bad votes in the legislature and then hold them accountable come election time, that's extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. So let's get back to our regular programming here. So more committees this week, more bills being heard. Moving on to Wednesday in the Energy and Environment Committee. There on February 19th, upon adjournment of the State House in the Old State Library. Interesting bill here. If everybody remember a couple years ago when they were trying to outlaw gas stoves. I mean, I guess maybe it was even last year. I don't know, but it was very recently. I remember they were going after gas furnaces, gas stoves, gas water heaters. They really want to try and get rid of natural gas as a fuel source, which is absolutely insane. So the most energy dense and powerful fuels that humanity's ever discovered, and they want to get rid of it. So here's a ridiculous bill to require the label of gas fueled stoves with this quote little sticker that says this appliance should be ventilated to the exterior when in use. And that's what this bill is. I mean, how ridiculous is this? That they nobody reads those little warning sticker labels, don't remove this take it off your tag off your mattress under penalty of law or something. Absolutely ridiculous, stupid bill. But nonetheless, just wanted to point it out because this is how small-minded our state government is. And of course, always pushing that agenda of trying to control our lives, get rid of natural gas, and create a little label for gas-fueled stoves. If it just saves one life, folks, right?
How much is the fiscal note for? Because I mean, this is an absolutely ridiculous bill. I'm kind of curious how much Valdez plans to waste with this bill.
Absolutely a silly bill. But this is an interesting committee because there's one more we want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
here House Bill 1165, Geologic Storage Enterprise and Geothermal Resources. Michael, you want to talk to us about this bill here that's being heard in that same committee?
It's another pointless enterprise that does not need to be enacted in the first place. You could see on here, we've talked recently about how Rep. Matt Soper, Republican, has been on a lot of really terrible bills. I mean, this does not help his case whatsoever. And I mean, I've been disappointed in quite a few of Cleve Simpson's bills as well. So to see both of these senators see Soper and Simpson on here, it's a bit of a disappointment because I mean you can see down here they plan on imposing and determining the amount of annual stewardship fees, funding long-term stewardship of geologic storage facilities in the state, funding the plugging, abandoning, reclaiming, and remediating of orphan geologic storage facilities in the state, ensuring the costs associated with long-term stewardship of geologic storage facilities are borne by geologic storage operators in the form of stewardship fees. So basically, they're trying to create an enterprise, which we all know is basically a government company that is likely not run in the most efficient manner, because otherwise, something like this would be done in the private sector. So when we do inevitably run into issues with this enterprise not being fundable, we have to eat it by through the general fund in our tax dollars. So there's a ton. It's a waste of time. We are one of the most regulated bill I believe Colorado has the most restrictive oil and natural gas laws in the country, and this is just another. Um, this is just icing on the cake. I mean, if you guys remember a year ago, they basically tried to completely ban oil and gas altogether. I mean, what would that have done to the eastern slope and everybody up in northeast Colorado? Um, I don't think I don't think that Democrats realize what kind of bear they're trying to poke. And at some point in time, I there's a lot of animosity in Northeast Colorado, and we've seen secession efforts before. I think there's going to be a certain point in time that if Democrats don't watch themselves, we're going to see a 51st state not in Greenland, not of Panama, not of Canada, but North Colorado.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous in this attack on oil and gas. And of course, now they're going after geothermal, as Forrest Mommy there in the comments says that Polis was hitting hard on geothermal not too long ago. So, of course, they want their greedy hands on it, of course. But yeah, for people who don't know, an enterprise is a government-run business. It's ridiculous, as Robert pointed out in the chat, it is a Tabor workaround. It's a way that they can create fees and a new regulatory structure, basically outside of the taxpayer's bill of rights by charging fees instead of taxes. But of course, it's so unfortunate. Matt Soper has been like I'm glad you brought that up, Michael, because he has been such a disappointment over the last 2 years. We're going to see another bill of his just shortly. That's really makes me upset. But yeah, nonetheless, I think the guy, if my personal opinion, is really a Democrat who just changed to be a Republican so he could win in his district, is my thought at this point. But yeah, of course, they want to go after carbon dioxide. They want to try and regulate geothermal resources there. But just this idea of having to create this enterprise with fees and taxes on top of it, it's another layer of government that is unnecessary. Moving on here, still on Wednesday. So the action-packed committee here. This is the Senate Judiciary Committee, Wednesday, February 19th, 1:30 p.m. in the old Supreme Court. This is definitely some bills to watch, folks. And here we are on a bill that is getting a lot of attention. This bill needs massive, massive opposition. Senate Bill 86, Protections for Users of Social Media. Now, we saw that similar bill last year, as you pointed out earlier, Michael. But unfortunately, we do have some Republicans who are big government Republicans, like Lisa Frizzell and Anthony Hartsook, on this bill. Very disappointed in them on other bills this year as well. But let's just pop into the fiscal note because there's so much to this bill. The fiscal note does a little bit better job of summarizing it, in my opinion, here. So let's just read through this really quickly. The bill requires social media companies to follow certain protocols relating to their policies, reports, and engagement with law enforcement. So the state government wants to force social media companies to follow these little rules. And if they don't, then they're just going to pull out of Colorado. I mean, that's the reality of it. If it's not tenable for these social media companies to do this, but here we go. Social media companies must publish up-to-date policies, including the process for a user to report policy violations, a description of the enforcement and resolution process, and a description of how the company restricts certain prohibited or illegal behavior. On discovering activity related to subject uses, a social media company must determine if the activity violates its policies and take action as appropriate. So, of course, selling and advertising illicit substances, illegal firearm sales, sex trafficking a minor, handling sexually exploitive material. But basically, they want the social media companies to start policing um, the social media users on behalf of the state government. And then the social media companies would be required to submit annual reports, including 2 reports to the Department of Law on reports of illegal activity, the kinds of illegal activity reported, and enforcement actions, and the number of Colorado-based users on the platform, and information about subject uses stemming from Colorado-based accounts. So, I mean, look at this. They want social media companies to be spying and reporting. I mean, this is like KGB style, Soviet style. Hey, this little commission, these little legislators want to tell the social media companies, start watching what these people in Colorado do. We want you to report back on how these Colorado-based accounts are doing things we don't like. And sure, it starts off with being things that are illegal or wrong, but then, why not make it about political issues? Why not make it about some other issues, right? I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And of course, any violation of the bill's provisions by a social media company is a deceptive trade practice. by the Colorado Consumer Protection Act. Talk about an abusive language there. Deceptive trade practice if they don't create these reports and monitoring system for people in Colorado. So, gosh, it's so disappointing. This kind of bill just angers me so much. What do you think about this one, Michael?
I completely agree. I mean, even going back to that last little bit you talked about, deceptive trade practices, we see that and I've seen that all the time this legislative session. They'll sneak some sort of language in saying it's a deceptive trade practice to do X, and it's something that's rather benign, to be honest, a lot of times. So, it's just the Democrats trying to sneak ways to control something that they don't like. Um, into some sort of bill in a way that seems rather innocuous, but it's honestly pernicious. So I completely agree. This thing is ridiculous. You want to talk about? We've seen other bills in the past in Colorado. I remember Senate Bill 158, which we talked about earlier. We also saw nationally the FBI, government agencies working with the Biden administration, particularly to clamp down on users' speech in social media from Facebook, the Twitter files, particularly with Matt Taibbi, after Elon bought Twitter and changed its name to X. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of this stuff happen, and I'm glad to see on a national level we're getting some pushback, but we haven't really seen the pushback quite yet in Colorado. But we need to make sure we let our legislators know that um, that this is not something we're going to stand for in Colorado, because this is a 1984 style abuse of power.
Well, look at this little spot I just highlighted. This bill would require a social media platform with at least 1 million users to provide a streamlined process to allow Colorado law enforcement agencies to contact the social media company that operates the social media platform and to comply with the search warrant within 72 hours after receiving the search warrant. So basically, yeah, they're turning the social media platforms into a snitch book, as somebody said in the chat there, Robert. Find a city cycling client at the Stasi bill. Yeah, this stuff is so frustrating and so angering to me. And I noticed through reading through in here, it didn't say much on the fiscal note, but here minor users. They mentioned minor users a few times. Well, how can these social media companies know if it's a minor or an adult? Well, really the only way to fully know is digital ID. And we've seen that push, and that's scary. That's a danger. That's something that people should be rejecting all out. So terrible, terrible part of the terrible bill. Yeah, the ID verification, as Robert's bringing up in the chat, and just such a disappointing bill. This kind of stuff, I think with enough pushback, a bill like this could be heavily amended or watered down or even withdrawn. But it really, folks, it takes people speaking up, getting involved, reach out to the bill sponsors. I'm sure some of you out there know some of the bill sponsors, reach out to them, try and get involved there, because this is just unnecessary. This is not the proper role of government to be getting involved and having control. And of course, even look, here's the legislative declaration. The General Assembly finds that criminal activity endangering Colorado youth occurs widely on social media platforms. It's, of course, this is that same emotionally manipulative language they use to say the youth are being harmed on social media minors are getting illicit substances and firearms, they're getting victimized through sex trafficking and sextortion. So it's the job of the state government, it's the job of these legislators. They're going to come in there and solve all of these problems, and they're going to put these quote unquote common sense laws into place. So they want annual data about minors use of social media platforms. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's a bad bill, folks. This is bad stuff here. And we do not want the state government involved in how we use social media. And then, it's just one step away from saying you're required to have a digital ID to get on the internet, on social media, like they're doing in Australia. I mean, it's one more step, and it's one more little brick in the wall of the surveillance state they're building around us. Some bad stuff. Bad stuff. So really, people speak out against Senate Bill 86. I mean, this is I'm going to be blasting the Republican co-sponsors on this bill, because they should be shamed for jumping on with Democrats to do this. And unfortunately, it's some of these guys who just don't understand how the internet works. They don't understand the need for anonymous speech. They don't understand the need for media companies to operate on their own without government intrusion. The government cannot solve all of our problems. The politicians cannot solve our problems. They only make them worse. And I mean, you could eventually get to a point where these social media companies just won't even operate in our state, which is absolutely ridiculous to think we're at this place here in 2025. Any other thoughts on this one, Michael?
I think you've summed it up very well.
Oh man, it makes me so mad. So this is Wednesday in the Senate Judiciary Committee. People, please make some noise. Get on social media, email, call, get involved with the bill sponsors, the committee hearings. Let's move on to Senate Bill 79, the Colorado Vending of Digital Assets Act. No, this is the virtual currency kiosks. So these Bitcoin ATMs and stuff that are around there. Now, of course, there's some bad actors or some people who've been scammed. There's some people who are taking advantage of the little crypto craze to try and get people to maybe make some bad decisions. But this bill's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty stupid, but I thought it was interesting. I know crypto's a big deal, of course, but this bill enacts the Colorado Vending of Digital Assets Act, which requires an owner or operator of a virtual currency kiosk to provide certain disclosures to customers of the virtual currency kiosk, provide customer with a printed and electronic receipt detailing the customer's virtual currency transaction, and fully refund a customer's first virtual currency transaction if the virtual currency transaction is to a virtual currency wallet or exchange located outside the United States and is determined by law enforcement to be fraudulent. So I mean, when you think about it that way, like this bill's not doing anything that these companies or these owners of these digital vending machine virtual currency kiosks should be doing on their own. But of course, it's not the role of the state government. It's a bad bill because, even good intentions cause bad problems, and these government officials do not have the knowledge needed to make decisions about how these virtual currency kiosks should be operating. And if people make bad mistakes, bad decisions, and they put money into these machines and it's fraudulent because they get duped, being scammed, as we've seen many times before, I hate to say it, but that's their own fault in so many ways, and it's not the government's job to protect you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is a wasted bill as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this does not need I think these people don't fully understand crypto, so they're just trying to regulate it because they don't understand it.
Yeah, it's a you probably hit the nail on the head there that they don't understand it. But yeah, bad bill. It's not the worst bill we've ever seen. It's nothing to take up arms over,
Yeah.
but it's something to be nonetheless something to pay attention to and something that people should be not happy with.
Yep.
Uh, in that same Judiciary Committee, gosh, there's a lot going on there. Senate Bill 20, tenant and landlord law enforcement. This is something we've talked about before. Oh my gosh, look at these names. I mean, if you see these four people on any bill, you know that it's going to be one of the worst pieces of legislation you've ever seen in your life. Um, tenant and landlord law enforcement. So this bill clarifies that the Attorney General has the power to initiate and bring civil and criminal actions to enforce certain state landlord-tenant laws. So Javier Marbury, is basically an eviction lawyer or involved in this in his law practice. So I mean, I don't understand how he can support or be on a bill that he could potentially financially benefit from. We saw the same thing happen with Steve Woodrow in the past, and unfortunately, these legislators can get away with that for whatever reason. I don't think they should be able to.
And if
But
I remember,
basically, yeah,
if
go
I
ahead. Go ahead.
speaking on that, I think that they are actually coming together to on a bill about tenant and landlord regulations. So, um, very concerned about that going forward.
This bill would grant counties, cities, and counties and municipalities the power to initiate and bring civil and criminal actions to enforce certain state landlord tenant laws. So that's the idea. They want to make it so impossible to be a landlord, to be renting property, to be a property owner that you want to rent out. I mean, these people are the same people complaining about housing shortages, but of course, their vision is state controlled affordable housing schemes, tenement buildings like Cabrini Green, Soviet style types of apartments. They don't want private landlords. They don't believe that private landlords could possibly be doing good for society. And they're doing everything they can to restrict the ability of people to rent out property. And they're only exacerbating the problems they're claiming to solve. It's just bad intent. I would say bad intention, but that's giving these people too much credit. It's people like Marbury and maybe even the Senadora there know what they're doing and are trying to destroy the concept of private property and the fact that individuals have ownership and the ability to rent it out. So Senate Bill 20, bad bill. It's another Stasi type bill where we're turning the attorney general, having them attack little mom and pop landlords and people who are trying to rent out property. Now you have all of a sudden the state government having their heavy hand come in. I mean, you're going to make it harder, more expensive, and more risky to rent your property out, decreasing the supply and increasing costs of rentals. It's the exact wrong thing that Colorado needs.
Look what Javier Milei did in Argentina. He completely got rid of rent control. Prices slashed in half and availability doubled. So these people, they're just trying to grift at our expense at the end of the day. I mean, I'm very concerned about a lot of the stuff that Mabry's doing. Also, I can't get over the fact that he's never looking you in the eye. That always bothers me. All the other senators and representatives are looking you in the eye, but never him.
Hey, Imabri doesn't even look at himself in the mirror. You could tell that just by looking at the guy. And honestly, I've seen him down at the Capitol a few times. He's probably I can only assume it's cocaine running through his system that makes him act the way he does, because I don't think a normal person who's not on drugs looks like he does.
I mean, as libertarians, I mean, I'm not saying that should be illegal or anything, but I mean, it is a little off. It's definitely a little off.
So yeah, people, so this is a theme we've seen over the last few years where the state's trying to take control over housing, and a bill like this is only going to make it harder for people to rent. And that's the end of the story. That's the reality there. So
Yep.
a fun-filled, action-packed Judiciary Committee this Wednesday, if at least in my opinion. But let's go ahead and move on to Thursday of this week. So these are all bills, folks, that you can testify on. You can provide written testimony. You should be emailing if you're interested in this, you want to participate, you want to help build a free state, email the bill sponsors, email the committee members, give them a call. You have plenty of time between now and Thursday to talk to people about this bill. Senate Bill 132 being heard in the Senate Business, Labor, and Technology Committee Thursday, February 20th, upon adjournment of the state Senate in the old Supreme Court. I actually think this is, from what I can tell, a decent bill. Um, we've talked a little bit about Senate Bill 33 earlier, last couple weeks, where it basically would prohibit new liquor licenses. This bill does kind of give liquor manufacturers the ability to do more tastings, which I think is something, if people want to help out the small mom and pop liquor stores, allowing more tastings and getting rid of the restrictions on them to host events where people can consume alcohol is a step in the right direction.
I,
So Senate
I
Bill 1, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I completely agree. I'm surprised that these prime sponsors have actually introduced a bill like this. Very, very pleased.
Senate Bill 132, spirituous liquor manufacturer tastings conducted. Under current law, a licensed manufacturer of spirituous liquor may conduct tastings of the manufacturer's own spirituous liquors at the manufacturer's licensed premises. Um, oh my gosh, I'm in Stranahan's. If you've ever been down to Stranahan's, awesome, awesome whiskey down there in Denver, right off I-25. You can go down there and do some tastings. Or currently, they can have one other approved sales room location. This bill would authorize the manufacturer to also conduct tastings of other alcohol beverages acquired from a wholesaler licensed in the state. So that's kind of good. You could have a whiskey distillery in your town that now can sell other alcohol beverages and then turn it into a little bit more of a bar. Hey, if they're already manufacturing this stuff there, let people drink it, right? And they can have up to 5 approved sales room locations. So don't get me wrong, this is totally not going far enough. It's such a minor little carrot or caveat or whatever you want to call it, carve out for these liquor manufacturers. But nonetheless, it's moving in the right direction. It's a good bill. Take it when we can get it. And thankfully, at least some measure of liberty where you can have 5 tasting rooms now instead of one. So nothing to be too excited about. Doesn't mean Matt Soper is a good liberty-minded representative, but hey, at least they're slightly moving in the right direction. So good bill there. I hope it makes some progress. Colorado's so right for getting rid of our restrictions on alcohol. We have so many outdated provisions there. So Thursday in the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources, that's this Thursday, February 20th, upon adjournment of the House in House Committee Room 107. This is a bill we've talked about before, and now it's finally coming to a committee. House Bill 1113, limit turf in new residential development. Of course, they don't like people having grass. Can't use the water. We're running out of water here in Colorado, major water issues. But of course, that doesn't stop the government from promoting high density housing and trying to just to totally build up massive apartment buildings across the state and the metro areas. But nonetheless, having a lawn is too much for them. So this bill does make some edits to a bill from last year, which we did talk about last year, Senate Bill 5. But let's look at the fiscal note here to kind of get a more clear breakdown. Here's really the overview that you need to know. The bill expands the current prohibition on non-functional turf to include residential property used for apartment or condominium housing. So there you go. So you have some decorative grass around your condo or house apartment building you want to build will no longer, according to our state government. Absolutely ridiculous. So last year, they passed the prohibition for local government from having non-functional turf or invasive plants in any new or redeveloped government property. This bill expands that prohibition to include residential property for apartment and condominium housing. So we see this all the time, Michael. We see where, hey, last year was a bad bill. We thought they were going to try and ban grass from all new residential development. They say, no, 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 no. It's only going to be local governments. And that's how it starts. Then this year they say, well, let's expand it to apartment buildings and condominiums. They don't need grass. They don't need this stuff there. And then next year, it'll be, oh, well, how about all new housing? Oh, how about people already have houses? It goes on and on. You give them an inch, they take a mile.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's gonna be legislative creep onto our liberty. I mean, just little by little and little. I mean, that's how they take your rights away. It's not all at once. It's piece by piece by piece by piece. I mean, look at all the gun legislation. It's here, 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 here. And then they take a big swing. Sometimes they miss a couple times, but but while they're even when you're focused on that big chunk like a assault weapons ban, like House Bill 2020 23 1230, for example, while they're doing that, they're still nickel and diming, nickel and diming, nickel and diming, nickel and diming. So I mean, we're seeing the same exact thing happen here. I mean, they're stripping our rights to our property. So it's only a matter of time before they start telling us what we can and can't do. I mean, you're already starting to see this on the local side within the metro area. There's certain places that say, hey, if you've got a new build, and it's a residential home, you can't put turf on there. You're gonna have to xeriscape your house. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's my property. I want to go put if I want to xeriscape, I'm gonna xeriscape. If I want to put a nice KGB lawn, I'm going to do it. If I want to build a putting green in my backyard, I'm going to build a putting green in my backyard. So, absolutely insane that these people think that they can tell us what we can do, what we can non-violently do on our own property.
Well said, sir. Definitely. So, folks, there's more. There's more bills being heard this week. More reason for you to get upset. More reason for you to get involved. And just we gotta fight, folks. Here's a good one. I think this is a good one from freshman state rep Chris Richardson and Senator Mark Baisley. House Bill 1089, county mail ballot signature verification requirements, being heard this Thursday in the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee upon adjournment of the State House in LSBA. That's the Legislative Services Building across the street. So currently, in every mail ballot election coordinated with or conducted by a county clerk and recorder, a single election judge personally conducts the review of each mail ballot for purpose of signature verification, unless the county clerk and recorder allows the election judge to use a signature verification device. This bill authorizes the county clerk and recorder to allow a team of bipartisan election judges, rather than a single election judge, to review mail ballots for purposes of signature verification. The bill authorizes the Secretary of State to adopt rules concerning the procedure for using a team of bipartisan election judges for such signature verification. Now, this bill is so important. We saw it in Rebecca Kelty's race. She won by 3 votes, folks, 3 votes for a state legislative seat. Now, you don't think that a signature verification could play a huge role in a tight race like that. So for there to be one election judge who maybe has a partisan tendency, why else are they getting involved? For the most part, they have a partisan attitude and they say, hey, I'm going to be the one and the only one to review people's signatures. I think that might not be the best course of action there, but having a bipartisan team of election judges definitely makes a lot of sense. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I'm glad to see some sort of election integrity email or bill pop up. I mean, we talked about the other bill, the Civil Rights Act, what is it, Colorado Voting Rights Act with the Senadora. Um, so I'm happy to see see an actual bill that's intended to protect our voting integrity, our election integrity. Introduced this legislative session. Now, considering the odds, I think it's unlikely that this thing passes because we know the Democrats love to say that the gold standard is the gold standard, and there's nothing that could actually be that everything is perfect with our current voting laws because we have such because nobody is better than Colorado when it comes to voting. Yet I think this points out a very valid point. I mean, you've got a lot of election judges who you might have one election judge. This will make it bipartisan, so that way, um, this will make it bipartisan, so that way that individual ballot that is questioned will have how do I want to say this? It will have a fair shake at whether or not it should be counted or not counted. And if it should not be counted, that will give an individual proper time to rectify their ballot, so that way their vote can properly be counted. So
Definitely, yeah.
I'd love to see this one pass. I just don't think it's gonna.
Yeah, fair point. Anybody who's involved in election integrity or has that one as their primary issue is definitely a good bill to get involved with. Show up, speak, do remote testimony, reach out to those committee members. But yeah, have your voice heard, folks. Now, this one's interesting. House Bill 251128 being heard this Thursday in that same committee. Very interesting bill. And the NRA supports this bill. Their state affiliate does at least. Rocky Mountain Gun Owners opposes it. And I also oppose it, but I'd love to hear your opinion here. House Bill 1128, income tax credit for firearm safety device. This bill creates a new income tax credit in an amount equal to the purchase price of a firearm safety device not to exceed $200 that is purchased by an eligible taxpayer from a federally licensed dealer. A firearm safety device is a device that is designed or can be used to store a firearm and is designed to be unlocked only by means of a key, a combination, or other similar means. So, what do you think about this one, Michael?
I mean, I like to be kissed before I go to before I'm forced to go to bed. So that's how I see it with this one. We shouldn't even have these mandated bills in the first place. I mean, I don't think this bill should exist because the mechanism to create this bill should not even exist. So, I mean, I'm against the bill. This bill's also just going to manipulate the market because we're using tax incentives. I'd rather see the market be unmanipulated because there's nothing wrong with finding with safe storage. I mean, I think it's very important to properly store your weapons when they need to be properly locked up. Now, the government shouldn't tell us when we can and can't lock up our guns. Um, so I'm a no on this one. I'd like to hear why you're a no on this.
The main reason I oppose this bill is because Coloradans would be writing on their tax returns that they have a gun, creating a gun registry, basically, another mechanism where the state government could track who owns firearms. I don't like that idea. We saw that last year with the Senate with the bill to create credit card tracking numbers so they can track any credit card purchase for a gun that's in effect now in Colorado, in effect last August. So just another way that the state government can say who owns firearms. Well, hey, this person did the income tax credit for a firearm safety device. They must own a gun. So just another gun registry scheme. Really opposed to that, definitely. Bad news.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that yet. That's horrible.
Right? Oh yeah, here, go ahead and tell us how many guns you have. We'll give you, we'll save you $4 on your taxes. And yeah, you'll just go in our little database here and hey, we'll have access to that information if we ever need it. So bad news for sure.
Yep.
Moving on to Thursday. Oh gosh, here we go. State Senate, the state Senate, state Veterans and Military Affairs always trips me up, trips everybody up, I think. Thursday,
Mhm.
February 20th, upon adjournment, Senate Committee Room 352, modifications to Colorado Open Records Act. Very similar to a bill we saw last year. And of course, we have Matt Soper on this horrible bill again. Gosh, Cora, if people don't know, is the Colorado Open Records Act. It's an amazing piece of law that allows Coloradans to have more access to their government, see how money's being spent, see how our government at all levels in Colorado is operating. But of course, these politicians want to change how Cora operates. Look at all of these changes they're making. The list goes on. Let's go look at the fiscal note. Maybe we get a little bit better broken down summary here. The bill makes multiple changes to the Colorado Opens Record Act, CORA, primarily related to a time frame a custodian of public records at a public agency has to respond to a request. Under current law, CORA requires that the custodian of records respond to requests within a reasonable time frame, presumed to be 3 days, which can be extended for extenuating circumstances up to 7 days. The bill maintains these timelines for requests from news media. For all other requests, the bill presumes that a reasonable time frame is 5 days, and any extension must not exceed 10 days. So they're carving out the media exemption and making everybody else second class citizens, where our request for government information is not as important as the media's. The bill expands the circumstances that allow a public entity to have a longer response period to account for the work schedule of the custodian and when records are in custody of another authorized person. Gosh, and it goes on from there, folks. Any thoughts on this one so far, Michael, before we get into the rest of it?
No, not really. I want to hear what else they're trying to do with this bill.
This bill would also require public entities post the rules for inspecting public records and their document retention policy on a website or post it at the entity's physical location. It permits a custodian to deny records containing information that could allow a person to contact a public K through 12 student through any method. Requires the custodian to provide a description of research and retrieval costs incurred upon request. Allows a custodian to treat core request made within 14 days of another request for similar information by the same person as one request for the purposes of determining costs and fees. So that can increase your costs, increase your fees, and extend the time for you to get that information. It also requires that a custodian of records permit a requester to pay fees with a credit card or electronic payment if the public entity allows those payments for any other service or product. So there's a couple good things in here that are good, like allowing people to pay for a credit card instead of a check, right? Some entities make you pay with the check or cash. So one or two good things, but nonetheless, carving out the media, extending the time in which people have access to government records. I mean, folks, knowing what the government does is a key component of living in a representative system. You want to call it a democracy, you want to call it a republic, whatever it is, if we don't know what the government does, if they're hiding things from us and trying to be less than transparent, then they are acting at odds with the interests of the people.
And
So, yeah, go ahead.
I think you're making a really good point, because of how many times we have seen the Colorado government try to restrict the Colorado Open Records Act. Uh, I think you can assume that these people are acting in bad faith. I mean, otherwise, what would they have to hide? We've seen other legislators too over how the Democrats have behaved. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember Reps Bob Marshall and Elizabeth Epps suing the Colorado Democrats because of how they were handling a lot of secret votes via, I believe it was either Signal or Telegram. So, I mean, there's a lot of shady stuff happening, and it's also very concerning to see our friend Matt Soper on this bill as well. Another example of a really bad bill that Matt Soper is sponsoring.
Yeah, Soper and these other prime sponsors of this bill, they're working on behalf of their local governments, of their city governments, their county governments, and the state government that wants more time and wants more money, wants to make it harder for an average normal people to get information about how the government is operating. They are representing the wrong people. Soper, Carter, Rich, Kip, you're supposed to be representing the people. You're not supposed to be up there making it easier for the government to take their time, drag their feet, and increase costs for us to get Open Records Act requests. So,
One last thing that I'm concerned about is, as a resident of Jefferson County, what's going to happen to Jeffco's schools? I mean, are they going to be allowed to hide more of their dirty business because of these bills, because of this law, if it's passed? Are they trying to protect, what are they trying to protect on the local level that's possibly detrimental to our own kids' safety?
oh, 100%. And, if you're a Kyle Clark or a Marshall Zellinger, hey, you get the information in 3 days. But if you're a citizen reporter, if you're an advocate in your community or somebody who cares about, believes about freedom, well, it's going to take 5 days. So, you don't mean as much as these ridiculous news media personalities. And it's just a horrible bill. People, I mean, there's so many bad bills, but Senate Bill 77 is any attempt to make it harder for people to have access to what the government is doing is bad news. Thursday, Energy and Environment Committee in the House Bill 1119, 1:30 p.m. The Old State Library decided to put this one on there because Manny Rootnell, this guy's a total freak. He's a total extremist. He's far left as they get, wants to ban meat, wants to shut down oil and gas, but he also is sponsoring a bill to require disclosures of climate emissions. So this guy thinks he can represent Congressional District 8. He's got to be kidding himself. But this bill would require each entity that does business in Colorado and has total revenues exceeding $1 billion in the preceding calendar year that must publicly disclose its total greenhouse gas emissions during that calendar year. So they need to tell us what their greenhouse gas emissions are if they want to do business in the state of Colorado. And the district attorney or the attorney general can bring civil action against them, getting $100,000 each day for noncompliance of them failing to report how much greenhouse gas emissions they use. Are you kidding me? Is it absolutely ridiculous? It's stupid. It's total posturing and just trying to make himself look good as this environmental warrior. But are you serious? You have a company maybe that's out of the United States that does $1 billion of does business in Colorado and has $1 billion in revenue somewhere else, they have to tell the state of Colorado how much. I mean, come on, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a joke. It's stupid. Manny Rootnell is not to be taken seriously. Um, Bad news.
I have no idea how they would account for all of that. I mean, you're not putting regulators on every single one of your vehicles all over the world just so that way Colorado can know how much of an effect on greenhouse gases or your carbon footprint is. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't see it. I don't see how this is a. I don't see how you would legislate this bill, even if it were to pass.
yeah. Or you get these businesses pulling out of Colorado. They just pull out of Colorado and say, "Hey, listen, I can't do. I'm not going to play your games. It's stupid." So had to bring up that bill just because Manny Rootnell's now on the radar for everybody for he's running for Congress in 2 years. And ridiculous. Now here's another bill being heard this Thursday, February 20th. This is time in the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee, House Committee Room 112 at 1:30 p.m. House Bill 1166, efforts to reduce food waste. From Lisa Ferret. I knew Forest Mommy would be happy to see that Lisa Ferret's making good use of her time down there at the state capitol. But her bill would require the Department of Public Health and Environment, to the extent that funding is available, to provide annual training that includes food waste prevention and reduction strategies. Develop a food waste reduction guidance document. Place the document on the department's public website and update that document at least a year. The bill, I mean, this is stupid. This is like a do nothing feel good bill, right? The bill suggests means by which retail food establishments may donate or resell safe food. The bill states that grocery stores are encouraged to clearly display the ingredients of items of prepared food and use best if used or frozen by dates rather than sell by dates on prepared items of food. Current law provides civil and criminal immunity to a farmer, retail food establishment, correctional facility, school district, hospital, processor, distributor, wholesaler, or retailer of food that donates items of food to a nonprofit organization for use or distribution in providing assistance to individuals in need. This bill would then extend this immunity to faith-based organizations that donate food and food donations to faith-based organizations. So, I mean, it's like this bill, okay, that's fine. If They want to donate food and maybe somebody gets sick off that food. Yeah, come on, you shouldn't get penalized for that.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it's a stupid bill. They're gonna solve the problem of food waste with this Senate bill or House Bill 1166. And you get a little Ronnie Weinberg on this bill too, who's been a complete and utter disappointment down there.
Yep. Yep.
So ridiculous, laughable, stupid bill. But folks, this don't worry about the Venezuelan gangs, the potholes, the crime, the failing schools. They're gonna put up a document on a website about how to reduce food waste. Now, here's another example of the attacks on landlords and rentals and private property. House Bill 1004, no pricing coordination between landlords. So, Michael, if you're a landlord and I'm a landlord and we decide to coordinate on what we're going to set our prices at because we're discussing markets, we're discussing hey, what are you charging? Oh, you're charging that? Okay, well, maybe I'll charge this. We could go to jail. We could be the attorney general will stick after us. So we get a little Wormy Woodrow and a little Marbury there on this horrible, horrible bill. This bill would prohibit a landlord or an agent, a representative or a subcontractor of a landlord from subscribing to, contracting with, or otherwise exchanging any form of consideration in return for the services of a coordinator. A coordinator would be prohibited from facilitating an agreement among landlords that restricts competition with respect to dwelling units, which includes performing a coordinating function. The bill would prohibit two or more landlords from engaging in consciously parallel pricing coordination. What do you think about this one?
I think this is just an attack on the free market. I mean, and considering the two people that we're discussing here, I mean, this is something that they're just trying to. I honestly think this is a grift bill. They are trying to find ways to attack people because they're lawyers, and then they can really get in and play hero to the working man or to to the little guy. That's their whole game, and while they're at it, they're gonna make a ton of cash because they're gonna sue these people because they're nasty, they're evil landlords that are and their crime is having a place for somebody to stay, and then they came up with a contract that was mutually beneficial with an individual who needed a place to stay and somebody who had a place for them to stay for a time period. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Both of these people can financially benefit from this bill through their law practices. They're going to use this legislation to their own advantage throughout their careers, and they're going to personally and financially gain from this legislation. That in and of itself should be illegal, I think, or should be prevented somehow. But yeah, um, bad news there. Somebody says, would this bill make comps illegal? I don't know about that, but bill would definitely hurt things there for people. A last bill of the week we wanted to bring up this week. There's plenty of them, folks. This is the good thing it's recorded on YouTube. You can go back, share this with people, please. House Bill 1158, digital education materials in the House Education. So talked about this one before, talked about it last week. It did get delayed. This is one that Brandy Bradley's really passionate about. I talked to Hannah about this last week. Basically, there's digital tools that kids use at schools nowadays. Thankfully, I never had to deal with that. But there's advertisements, promotion, there's URLs where people can click on it, and all of a sudden they're looking at bad stuff that kids should not be exposed to in public schools. This bill would basically prevent it. Now, don't get me wrong, it really is up to the school districts and the local schools to make those decisions. But if they're failing and kids are getting on government school devices that they're required to use, getting exposed to some stuff that they shouldn't be, then I could see a need for a bill like this. Any thoughts on this one, Michael?
I definitely see that. I mean, I'm a little torn on this one because I could see from a free market perspective if somebody has made a deal um, with a if a company who creates curriculum has made a deal with like a school district and the school is a little cheap, they might need to add a little bit of. I could see them potentially needing to add a little bit of advertising in somewhere, but typically I don't think that's necessarily happening. I don't necessarily know if it has to be state law, but I definitely get where um, where Rep Bradley's coming from on this. So I don't necessarily know if I'm for or against this one, because I can definitely see why somebody would want to create a bill um, where we were protecting kids from being distracted and therefore failing grades as well, from failing their classes because they're going on extra sites as well. And that's not something we want if we have public schools. Granted, as a libertarian, definitely think we need a lot of drastic reforms, I'll say, to be light, within our school system. But yeah, I don't necessarily know if I'm for or against this one yet. I kind of want to see where this one goes and chew on this one a little bit more.
Definitely. So perfect. So that's what we got, folks, this week. Lots of bills being heard in committee. The last segment of our live stream every week is to go over the bills we've been tracking. So we're going to talk about some of the bills that are not necessarily being heard in committee this week, but are bills we're kind of keeping an eye on. It's getting late, so we'll fly through a lot of these, but definitely some interesting stuff there for sure. The Senate bill, House Bill 1005, the tax incentive for film festivals. That's a bill we've been talking about a lot. Really disappointing to see Republican Senator Mark Baisley on that bill. We had a lot of Republicans support that in its first committee, unfortunately, that Business Affairs and Labor. Thankfully, by the time it got to Finance, the Republicans wisened up and all voted against it, but it still passed through both those committees and is now moving to appropriations. And I just wanted to bring this one up because I happened to be looking online and saw in the Denver Post, Denver Pest this week, that somebody wrote a letter to the editor saying those $34 million tax credits for the Sundance Film Festival will raise your Tabor refunds. They're not wrong. So here's an editorial in the Denver Post saying the $34 million Colorado taxpayer bribe to entice the Sundance Film Festival to relocate to Boulder misses a bigger issue. As the sole legislator so far to vote against this taxpayer giveaway to a private entity, I've observed up close the legislative fetish to reward politically favored groups rather than focusing on core government functions. It's a huge problem and a bipartisan one. So this is from that first committee. Not a single Republican voted against this. $34 million rate on Colorado's Tabor taxpayer refunds for Boulder's Film Festival, despite claiming to be responsible protectors of Tabor. Any guess who wrote this editorial there, Michael?
I have a feeling this is our good friend Ken DeGraff. I mean, that legislative fetish statement, that's such a good phrase, such a biting phrase. I absolutely love it. The only person I could think of that would have that type of bite is Rep DeGraff.
I wish you were right, but unfortunately, as it kind of gives not a single Republican voted. So this is a Democrat. This is actually Representative Bob Marshall. Democrat Bob
Wow.
Marshall was the voted in the right way. And no, don't get me wrong, doesn't excuse all his other bad behavior, but Bob Marshall voted the right way. And how embarrassing is this? How embarrassing is this for the other Republicans in that business committee who all voted for this bill? And you have Bob Marshall publicly calling you out in the Denver Post editorial for the fact that you are raiding Tabor's refunds to bribe the Sundance Film Festival to come to Boulder. I mean, absolutely. So let's House Bill 1005. Just pull it up for people so you can see which Republicans voted for it. I know weren't planning on spending a ton of time on this. So the Finance Committee, like I said, by the time it got there, the Republicans voted right. But in that first committee, the House Business, Labors, and Affairs is a 12-1 vote. And of course, Bob Marshall was the only one to vote against it. So here you go. Bob Marshall in the Denver Post this week calling out Ryan Armagost, Max Brooks, we'll just go through Rebecca Kelty. We'll just talk about the
Oh,
Republicans. Chris Richardson, Larry Don Sukla, and then of course all the other Democrats voted for it, besides Bob Marshall. So unfortunately, I know, right? How
I
upsetting is this?
oh oh come on. Kelty was a pledge signer too, so I'm very disappointed that she voted yes. Oh.
And Armagost, that's my state rep. He's great on
Mm-hmm.
so many things. But unfortunately, and then Max Brooks, who's supposed to be this conservative firebrand, Chris Richardson in a very safe Republican seat. But yeah, and then there you go, folks. You have Republicans voting to give money. Of course, Senator Mark Baisley sponsoring the bill to give money to bring in big film festivals to Colorado, giving them $35 million in tax credits that come out of our Tabor refunds. And Bob Marshall gets to blast you and call you out in the Denver Post. I just had to bring that up. I just had to bring it up because Um, the irony was too great. I don't want to give Bob Marshall that much credit. Don't get me wrong, but when he's right, he's right.
I can't believe how right he was, and I can't believe how hard he went. I mean, that I am absolutely flabbergasted at that right there. That one specific thing from Bob Marshall, bravo, sir. But he's done so much bad crap, but that one thing, I got to give him props when he does something right.
Yep. So moving on, we'll just fly through these. These are our other bills that we've been paying attention to. We have an update on every single one. House Bill 1010 prohibiting price gouging and sales of necessities. Frank wrote an amazing editorial against that, published on freestatecolorado.com. Check that out. That's going to be heard on the House floor this Tuesday, February 18th. We'll see how it goes. You can pretty much guess how it's going to go, but hopefully some of these Republicans will at least speak out against it. Moving on, law enforcement whistleblower protection 1031. It was assigned to the judiciary. There's no date yet. Also, a Denver Post article about that bill this last week. House Bill 1040, adding nuclear energy as a clean energy resource, did pass committee. Is going to be heard Wednesday on the House floor, February 19th. And stop me on any of these, Michael, if you want to talk about any of them. I'm just going through quick because there's so many of them.
Oh, absolutely. We got a lot to get through.
Criminal asset forfeiture. Super excited about this. I wish we would have brought it up. But we had Representative DeGraff talk about it previously, but their criminal asset forfeiture bill in the House Judiciary Committee, House Committee Room 107 this Wednesday, February 19th. Definitely a bill that we want to talk about. Want people to show up and speak in favor of there. Um, so apologize for not bringing it up earlier, but just taking a quick look at it. There's on the 19th. So yeah, some interesting bills, but the biggest one there is this criminal asset forfeiture bill from Representative DeGraff. Really hope people can reach out on that one, show up and speak. Basically, if you missed Ken DeGraff's interview with us or him joining the live stream, his bill 1067 would eliminate civil asset forfeiture in Colorado and require a criminal conviction for your property to be confiscated and seized by these government officials, these greedy law enforcement people who want to steal all your money without you even being convicted of a crime. So amazing bill being heard this week, super important. Really encourage people to get involved there. Definitely will be posting a lot about that one on social media. That is being heard this Wednesday, February 19th. House Bill 1055, the repeal firearm dealer requirements and state permit. You got a new date of February 27th in the Business Affairs and Labor Committee. So we'll be talking about that one next week. Representative Bradley's bill 1073, protections against child rape, assigned to judiciary. No date yet. We'll keep people updated on that. Senate Bill 5, the absolutely horrible union bill, worker protection collective bargaining. It's going to be heard this Tuesday on the Senate floor. It did pass out of committee, as we saw. That was this last week in committee, and so now it's going to the Senate floor. Well, yeah. So there we go. Senate Bill 47, enforcement of federal immigration law, coming up on Tuesday, February 25th. Senate Bill 20, we talked about this week, the tenant and landlord and law enforcement bill. Senate Bill 3 will be heard on Tuesday. So people were asking about that in the chat earlier. Of course, they changed it to basically making you get a firearms owner ID card like they have in Illinois, where you have to get a ID if you want to buy a specific type of gun. Total infringement on our Second Amendment rights. Senate Bill 3, we'll see how hopefully there's some good fireworks and some good floor speeches and they push back against this bill. They amended it like crazy, but nonetheless, it in a way I don't like that they amended it to make it more palatable. I wanted it to be bad, so it's easier to be thrown out in court or vetoed. The last thing I want them to do is make it more acceptable to become law. But we'll see that on Tuesday. Any thoughts on Senate Bill 3? Go for it.
It's much more fascist that in this way. I mean, they're going to require you to have papers in order to um, protect your, exercise your Second Amendment rights. It's absolutely asinine, in my opinion. Uh, we're also seeing a lot of pushback. Thankfully, I know RMGO is where Spartan Events. A lot of those guys are working on recall efforts. I know recallxm.com just went live today. Now, uh, there's a lot of strategy that's going to need to go get behind these recall efforts. At the same time, we also need to be thinking about 2026 because we really need to make sure people like Exum, who is in a vulnerable seat, find their get their comeuppance. They need to have their political career um, uh, defeated either in recall or in 2026. So no matter what, I think we need to really put the heat on these people. And again, peaceful manner. Don't say something stupid that's going to give them the political advantage because you're mad. You're very how do I say this? Justified in your anger, but don't say something stupid that's going to cause somebody to have the political advantage against you to push a bill through. Be very careful, be very civil, be peaceful, and when you're out there, just don't do dumb things. Uh, is really what I'm trying to say, and keep on fighting, keep the battle up because we can still beat this. I mean, look at how much they had to modify the bill to make it go through, and at this point, I'm calling this the papers, please, bill.
Yeah, 100%. Papers, please, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, there's still a chance this bill could be stopped. I think it's a third reading, so it's just recorded votes. I mean, this is the vote where all these legislators, all these senators are going to be on the record. So there's really key ones that are coming up in 2026. Like you said, Tony Exum, Henriksen is another one, and there's a few others that are total swing seats. And really, if they vote wrong, I mean, Republicans could pick up 3 Senate seats in 2026, and that would be pretty good stuff for our gun rights for sure. Senate Bill 33, prohibit new liquor licensed drugstores. That's Rep. Weinberg's horrible bill to prohibit alcohol sales, coming up on the Wednesday on the Senate floor on February 19th. This one is one of the worst cannabis bills we've seen in recent history. Senate Bill 76 has been assigned to the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee, but no date yet. We'll keep you an eye on that one. But definitely, folks, Senate Bill 76 is one people need to get ahead of. You really need to be reaching out to your senator and your representative now. This would ban the sale of marijuana if it has too high of a concentration to people under 25 years of age. It's all of these types of new labeling requirements and cost increasing things. Absolutely dumb bill. So please start opposing that one now. Senate Bill 86, we talked about being heard this week, and 79 as well. Modifications to Colorado's Open Record Act, CORA, Senate Bill 77. This Thursday, we talked about that one. The regulation of Kratom bill, another disappointing bill. We had Republican Soper and Senator Byron Pelton, support this bill. We had a lot of Republican legislators vote yes on it in committee. Really, in that finance committee, really disappointing. But it is going to appropriations. No date is assigned yet. Hopefully, it gets killed there.
One thing that I do want to say about the Kratom bill, um, I know that Senator Pelton, his big thing was making sure babies weren't born addicted to the high potency of kratom and making sure it's not sold on the black market. Well, if you've got a black market, that's because you've got such intense regulations that it's creating a difference between the regulated market price and the black market price. Because if you're going to sell something in the black market, you're going to have to take a risk. And in order for there to be a discrepancy so bad for the regulated market to be more expensive than the black market, that's a problem. So we need to deregulate kratom. This is going to do the absolute opposite of what we need in Colorado.
Well said, 100%. House Bill 1089 being heard this week, the signature verification requirements. House Bill 1006, school district solar garden lease term. This is where the school district property could be used for solar gardens or for affordable housing. It did pass the House. It's on the Senate Education Committee, but no date has been assigned yet. Very unfortunate there. House Bill 1140 being heard this week, disclosing information to immigration authorities. House Bill 1141, Representative Bradley's bill, and Senator Carson, he's been good so far, is going to be on February 25th, Tuesday in the Judiciary Committee, basically to increase penalties for retail theft, which is, might be a good thing at this point. House Bill 1144, the repeal retail delivery fees. We talked about that a couple hours ago now. That's a good one. Being heard this week. House Bill 1133. Oh gosh, that did pass. Unfortunately, the business committee there in the House and will be on the House floor this Wednesday. Absolutely horrible bill, requiring you to be 21 years or older to buy firearms ammunition. You have to lock up ammunition. It's It's going to be a lot harder for you to get parts if you do your own reloading. It's going to be harder to get stuff sent through the mail. They basically want to ban, it's a de facto ban on shipping ammunition through the mail, basically, is their idea. Bad news.
It's
Bad
so
news.
awesome that that an 18-year-old can die for Biden's Ukraine war, but they can't but they can't shoot a gun or buy fire, or I shouldn't say shoot a gun, but they can't buy ammunition in Colorado if this bill passes. Absolutely ridiculous.
Total infringement, total ridiculous. Absolutely tyrannical. 1127, that's the register and drive surplus military vehicles that did pass that committee. Now it's going to the Finance Committee Thursday, the 27th. House Bill 1093, limitations on local anti-growth land use policies. Unfortunately, that did pass the committee. Not don't like that one at all. That's going to be heard on the House floor on Tuesday, the 18th. Limit turf, we talked about that one. Requirements for filling certain vacancies in offices. This is one of the first bills we're seeing this year to deal with vacancy elections. There's more to come. It's pretty minor, but nonetheless, probably a good bill because Representative Stephanie Luck's always been a good liberty fighter. It has been assigned to the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee in the House, but no date yet. County lodging tax expansion, House Bill 1247. They want to increase hotel taxes, motel taxes, especially up in the resort areas, making it more expensive. So they can use that money for affordable housing, of course. This bill was assigned to the Transportation and Housing Local Government Committee, but no date yet. The Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, House Bill 1239, will be Tuesday, the 25th, excuse me, in the Judiciary Committee. Absolutely ridiculous. We'll talk about that one next week. Government transparency laws. Now, this is a good one. This is one that a lot of good people have been working on. House Bill 1242. There's a coalition. Sherry Pike wrote about it recently. The Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, the League of Women Voters, the Independence Institute. A lot of different people are really behind this one, and it's a great, great bill. Has been assigned to the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. No date yet, but yeah, to basically repeal the open meetings bill that the legislature passed last year and also provide more transparency efforts for our state government. So, really great bill. We'll be definitely talking about that one in the future. And then I don't know if people saw this one, but they want to go after gun shows. Big surprise. House Bill 1238 going to be heard Monday, February 24th to go after gun shows, creating all these new requirements, new restrictions, new costs. You have to come up with some sort of plan and talk to law enforcement and do all these other things. They want to make it very difficult for you to have a gun show in Colorado. So that one's coming up. Horrible, horrible bill there.
I remember what Scott Bright said. Senator Bright told us all a couple weeks ago that now is the time to start reaching out to the individuals on this committee. This is the House State Civic, Military, and Veteran Affairs Committee. So send them an email now. Tell them this is a terrible bill. Tell them why it's a terrible bill, because somebody might not necessarily have made up their mind at this point yet. So reach out now. Hey, Brandon, you're muted.
Yeah, reach out now. I know we talk a lot about the committees that are being heard that this week, but really, this big list of bills is just stuff you should be getting involved in now if you want to have the biggest impact, the best impact. Um, this one's a good one. Representative Luck, House Bill 1255. This is new this week. I hadn't seen this one before. Healthcare provider right to exercise conscience. Protecting a healthcare provider's right to exercise their conscience and providing healthcare. Assigned to the Judiciary Committee. No date yet. Another good one from Scott Bottoms, 1251. Parental consent to treatment of a minor. Concerning requiring parental consent before a minor may obtain medical services. That's a great bill. Assigned to Health and Human Services. No date yet. 1237, really excited for this one. It would allow people places that have a liquor license to sell beverages until 2:30 in the morning instead of 2 o'clock in the morning. So there we go, folks. We get another half hour to drink. Of course, I think they should totally limit the 2 a.m. cutoff law. Let each county or municipality make their own rules. We don't need a state rule on this thing. It's ridiculous. But nonetheless, another half hour is a good thing. House Bill 1237, assigned to the Business Affairs and Labor Committee, no date yet. House Bill 1243, peace officer questions during traffic stop. kind of interested in this one, especially with Faith Winter basically pretty much getting caught drinking and driving last year. But this bill would prohibit a peace officer from asking a person during a traffic stop if they know the reason for the traffic stop. Do you know why I pulled you over? Trying to get you to admit to something, right? So I actually kind of like this bill. I want to see how it goes. We'll see how it ends up, but nonetheless, kind of interested in 1243. Moving on here, really excited for House Bill 1190 from Representative Ryan Gonzalez, expanding Colorado Cottage Foods Act, aka the tamale law, allowing the sale of foods that require refrigeration. So, that'd be great. We'll really keep an eye on that one. Assigned to agriculture, water, and natural resources. No date yet. 1232. I like this one as well from Representative Luck. Liability when means of self-defense are prohibited. So you see some places that ban firearms, they even ban concealed carry. Most people just ignore those signs. But nonetheless, Representative Luck makes a great point here that they should be liable if you're not allowed to legally defend yourself on their property, and then somebody comes in and is a violent criminal and you can't defend yourself and you otherwise normally would be, they should be liable for not having you be able to do that. So, interested to see that one. We'll talk about that more once it gets a date. This one's interesting. House Bill 1203. A lot of these are new bills this week, folks. There's so many bills out there. Misbranding cultivated meat products as meat. So they want to distinguish between lab grown meat and real meat. That's what this bill's about. So kind of interesting there. We'll keep an eye on that one.
Isn't this
Actually,
one similar to the one that was recently pulled?
yeah, the one to ban lab grown meat, basically.
Mhm.
They pulled that one, and I think this is kind of the new version of it, I think. Now, I actually kind of like this one, House Bill 1175, smart meter opt-in program. So basically, if you opt out of having a smart meter, like I have, where the meter reader still has to come by your house. You don't have this internet controlled digital electricity meter that can charge you more during peak hours, monitor you, control the temperature in your house with the smart thermostat. The list goes on. This would require you to have to opt in for smart meters after you've opted out. They couldn't just come in and do that. So kind of a good bill, actually, I think, especially because we have so much of a problem with these monopoly energy providers here in Colorado. So we'll keep an eye on that one for sure. And then let's move on to the dead bills. Here's the RIP bills, the ones that have died. So Senator Sullivan's bill to get him to pay less taxes on his cars that he likes, the premium ones, that got killed. The permanent trailer registration, I did think was a good bill, was killed. The egg bill, of course, dead. The 10-cent paper bag fee, they killed that bill. The insect production, human consumption, that was an interesting one. That one's dead. That would have banned insects. I don't have a problem with people eating bugs if they want to, but nonetheless, open source software and voting systems was killed. Non-citizen voter registration cancellation was killed. Again, it's one of those scenarios like we talked about with Rich, where it's not happening. There's no way that Colorado people who are non-citizens are getting ballots or voting. There's no way. That's impossible to happen. Well, then why did they kill this bill? This bill would have just made sure that people who are not citizens are not getting ballots. Couple more. House Bill 1044 is excited to see this one was killed this last week. Local funding for vulnerable road user protection. But I heard there's just another form they're going to reintroduce it as something that's more palatable for some of these local governments. Scott Bottom's Bill 1145 to prevent trafficking of a minor for abortion to Colorado or transgender care. Of course, that was killed. No surprise there. And then the Larry Sukla's bill to remove the limitations on ability to have over 100 gallons of rainwater collection on your property. He wanted to get rid of that, and that was killed. So there we go, folks. Thanks for bearing with us. We had 41 slides this week, and unfortunately, it's only going to get a little longer because there's more and more to come. But I really appreciate everybody joining us. What are some of your thoughts on this week's Michael?
I'm just absolutely flabbergasted by the amount of bills. I mean, your first slide said it all. 458 bills introduced, and we're only in mid-February. I'm very curious where we're going to land on a final number when each representative is only supposed to get 5 bills. That would tell me that there's only supposed to be, about 40 some bills left to go. But something tells me that we're going to see a lot more between now and the end of legislative session.
Yeah, last year I think it was 700 bills were introduced. I think this year it might be up to 1,200 bills. So we'll see exactly, but I think we covered some really interesting material. And folks, there's not anybody else out there that I'm aware of trying to get information out to the public like what we're doing every week. So please join us, let people know about the live stream, share the video. It's on YouTube, so you can go back and look or share it if there's any bills of interest. But it's so important to know what's going on in our local government. It's so easy to be distracted by what's happening in Washington, D.C., especially all the news these days, right? But what's happening in Denver, in your local communities, in your state matters more than what's happening in Washington. And pay attention, get involved. These people have names. These people are up for election. These people can be held accountable through the ballot box, but it's up to us to know what's going on, to have a voice, to use it, and to get other people involved in participating in this process. So really appreciate everybody joining. There's so much opportunity in Colorado. We're going to be a free state eventually, but it's going to take a lot of work, and this is the start. So any other thoughts, Michael?
Uh, Not too many. I'll just say that now is the time to be thinking about 2026. Let's start getting together. We need to, we need to think about the upcoming elections in 2025 and 2026 in a way we haven't in Colorado in years past. Because if we're going to make real change in Colorado, now's the time to start making those inroads. Let's start networking. Let's start getting people together, because if we're going to do something different that's going to change Colorado for the better, it's going to start today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Thank you, Michael. Thanks everybody on the chat. Thanks everybody on YouTube. Thank you everybody out there, and we'll see you next week, 7:30 throughout the legislative session. We'll be back. We'll see what the damage is this week, and I'll be posting clips on Free State Colorado on Twitter and Facebook as I can throughout the week of what we covered to keep you informed about some of these important pieces of legislation. So thank you everybody. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.